All right, so I am starting the recording. So I think the recording's going. So this is a promotional video for our Auspicious Elections podcast, which we do each month for patrons of the Astrology podcast who support the show on the $5 or $10 tiers. So in this little brief promo video, we're actually going to talk about two of the most auspicious electional charts that we found for August of 2017. So our first chart, or joining me, is Lisa Scheim. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone listening.
And it looks like it's still getting set up on Facebook for the live stream. So who knows if that's actually working or going through, and if there will be, I think there's supposed to be like a 30-second delay or something like that.
Okay.
So what's the first chart? So we're going to look, I think, first at the August 2nd chart. So August 2nd, 2017.
Yeah, that one's just coming up in a few days. So this is a great usable chart if you need to do something in the next week, in the next few days.
Hold on, the Facebook one actually failed.
Oh. Huh, I wonder why.
It could have had to do with my attempt to like record afterwards. Oh, but then people are commenting on it? Actually, it might have actually still gone through. Okay, it's actually streaming live on Facebook right now.
Okay, great.
We're both
Hi, everyone.
acting like idiots. All right, let's try this again. Okay. We're doing a promotional video to talk about two of the auspicious electional charts that we picked out for August. And we have actually, how many did we pick out this month? We picked out 6 or 7, right?
Actually 7 this month. Usually it's 4 that we pick out every month to highlight for people who are looking for auspicious times to do something important that month. It's the times to do them that will, in theory, work out better than otherwise. And we share that with subscribers on the $5 and $10 tiers of Patreon.
Sure. So you can find out more information about that on our website, which is theastrologypodcast.com. And specifically to sign up on Patreon, you go to patreon.com/theastrologypodcast or /astrologypodcast, one of the two. And then if you sign up on the $5 or $10 tier, you'll get access to the full episode that we just recorded, which is about 45 minutes long, talking about all 7 of those charts. But today we wanted to go ahead and share just 2 of them for this little promo video to talk about a couple of the charts that we found and give a little preview of those. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to show the first chart that we found. And what's the data on this chart, Lisa?
So this one is this coming Wednesday. It's August 2nd at 11:40 a.m. local time. And this one has about 17 degrees of Libra rising.
Okay, so this is 11:40 a.m. and this is local time. So what you want to do is you should be able to set the chart for roughly about that time in your location in whatever city you're located in, and then adjust the degree of the ascendant until it's at about 17 degrees of Libra, and then you'll have roughly the same chart as what we're showing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so this is actually a pretty good chart coming up shortly here. We've got Libra rising, so Jupiter's in the first house in a day chart, and Jupiter is the most positive planet you can have in the chart during the day. And so it's right on the ascendant. Then you've got Venus ruling the ascendant in the 10th house in Cancer. And it's a little bit wide by degree, but it does have the ascendant ruler then applying to Jupiter, which is really great as well. And both benefic planets in really prominent angular houses, the first house and the 10th house. Sagittarius moon in this chart is applying to Jupiter as well by sextile with reception. And yeah, so it's a pretty good chart. It is a waxing moon phase as well, which is nice.
Sure. So that's useful for building up new things or starting or initiating new projects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see what else. Uranus is stationing that day. That is probably the main drawback in this chart. It's not super prominent. It's in an angular house, but it's not in the 1st or the 10th. It's later in degree. But it's something to be aware of in terms of a little bit of maybe unexpectedness kind of cemented into that election. But aside from that, there's some really nice things going on in this chart if you need to start something around this time of the month. So the moon Jupiter, the Venus Jupiter. I think, as you mentioned when we were doing the recording earlier, even the 11th house, which does have Mars in it in a day chart, which is less positive, is still ruled by the sun in Leo, in its own sign of Leo, applying to Jupiter.
Right. So the main drawback to this chart, or the main area where there are some issues, is the placement of Mars in Leo in the 11th whole sign house. So there's a potential for strife or potential conflicts with friends or groups or social movements and things like that. Although there is some mitigation because the ruler of the 11th house is the sun, which is applying to a sextile with Jupiter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Mercury is getting closer to stationing retrograde, but it's still direct so far.
Right. So we're about, it looks like the table says we're about 10 degrees away from Mercury stationing retrograde. So that is a potentially problematic. It's not great in terms of communication, that we're getting ready for kind of a tough Mercury retrograde where it's going to retrograde back into Leo and conjoin Mars on the degree of the eclipse at 28 degrees of Leo. But otherwise, the chart is pretty strong, especially for 10th house matters, since the ruler of the ascendant is in the 10th whole sign house. And the ruler of the 10th house itself is the moon, which is applying to Jupiter with reception because the moon is in Jupiter's sign. So it's a pretty strong chart for those matters.
Yeah, it's really nice, and doesn't happen that often to have both a benefic planet in the 10th house, as well as applying to Jupiter, as well as the house's ruler applying to Jupiter. So it's really nice to have both.
Right. Okay, awesome. So that is that chart, the first one that we wanted to highlight for August 2nd. And the other chart that we were going to highlight for this month is the one that I actually mentioned on the forecast episode that I just recorded for the Astrology podcast with Austin and Kelly, which we also live streamed a few days ago. And this chart takes place on August 18th as one of the main charts that we highlighted for the month.
Yeah, this one's really nice in that so this one's Cancer rising. It's 21 degrees of Cancer rising, August 18th, around 3:24 a.m. is the chart data. And with Cancer rising, the moon is in Cancer that day, and so you have the ascendant ruler in its own sign of Cancer. It's with Venus, and this is a night chart since it's 3-ish in the morning. So Venus is the benefic of the sect. It's the most positive planet in the night chart, and it's in the first house. So that's really great. And then the moon is applying to a square with Jupiter in 4th house in Libra. So you've got the moon acting as itself, but also as the ascendant ruler with Venus and Jupiter. So that's really positive, even though there's a little bit of degrees to go before it hits those 9-10 degrees. But it's a pretty clean chart. It's not really running into Mars or Saturn. It will oppose Pluto before it gets to Jupiter and Venus. But other than that, it's a pretty clean chart in terms of Venus and Jupiter both being in angular houses and the moon being with both of them.
Right. So this is like the last chart in that it really highlights Venus, but this chart arguably it puts even more of the focus on Venus because it's in a night chart where Venus is its most positive, and it puts Venus right on the degree of the ascendant in the early morning, shortly before sunrise. So if you actually use this electional chart on this day, what you would see if you went outside is you would see the moon and Venus rising over the eastern horizon in Cancer at that moment, right about the time you were trying to initiate whatever new project that you wanted to start at that time. You would see this bright sort of glistening white star rise over the horizon right at that moment, and that would be the moment of your election. So it's one of those electional charts that's kind of beautiful because you can immediately see the symbolic rationale through the sort of visual astronomy of it, which would be pretty striking that morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and this is also just before the second eclipse of the month, and Mercury will be retrograde by then, but it doesn't really rule anything crucial in the chart. So if you need an election for this month, and particularly later in the month, this is a really great chart.
Definitely. And this would be a good chart, especially because it's so focused on Venus for matters that require like good aesthetics or things that require making a positive first impression or having a sort of pleasing aesthetic appeal to them because of the focus on putting Venus right on the degree of the ascendant and making that essentially the most prominent planet in the chart. And then that's re-emphasized by making the moon as the ruler of the ascendant applying to that conjunction with Venus in the same sign within about 12 or 13 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And Venus is also ruling the fourth house and the 11th house. So if you can kind of combine that aesthetic with either groups, I would say even, potentially websites or something, because sometimes the 11th house is sort of the greater social sphere. So putting up, something that like a really pleasing looking website at that point, or something having to do with fourth house matters like home and family.
Definitely. All right, awesome. So that's the second and the other chart that we wanted to highlight this month in terms of the auspicious elections for August of 2017. And I think that's pretty much it. So we've got a total of, there's 5 other charts that we also ended up finding for this month, but we will save those for people who are subscribers to the Auspicious Elections podcast. If you'd like to find out more information about that, then you can just find our page on Patreon where we sort of outline the whole thing and talk about it. Or there's also a page, one of the pages on the astrologypodcast.com where we talk about it and provide another preview video as well. And then I think, Lisa, you do electional astrology consultations if somebody wants to pick out a date and sort of have it personalized, right?
Yeah, elections are always best personalized, of course, if it fits with your natal chart, or if you're looking for an election that's further out than this month. Yeah, I do those. LisaSheim.com.
Excellent. And I teach a course in electional astrology, which you can find out more information about at theastrologyschool.com. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. And thanks for letting us know that the stream was working. That's kind of funny that there's probably a few minutes of us kind of bumbling around trying to get it to work and not realizing that it was already live.
Right.
Because Facebook said that it failed, but I think that's probably because we did not follow our own advice and use one of our auspicious electional charts for this episode.
Yes.
So maybe next time.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'd love you to join us for all of the elections.
All right, cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.